Hey, welcome back to OT Asset Management Weekly. Today we look again at vulnerabilities, especially at new vulnerabilities as they drop in. And what I would address first is that many organizations approach this in the wrong way. So many OT security experts digest the latest publications from a vulnerability aggregator such as CISA, where CISA in their latest bulletin or advisory tells you, lately there were a bunch of nasty vulnerabilities that you should probably take care of. Other people just digest the inflow of vendor vulnerability notifications, such as from Rockwell, so Rockwell, Siemens. Many of those vendors have their own notification systems where they inform customers about new vulnerabilities, and that usually then takes place via email. And just consider the process that is started with such an advisory. Then the expert tries to identify, well, are we actually affected by this new vulnerability, for example, that affects, Microsoft Office products or Rockwell, RS Links, Studio 5000 in versions X, Y, and Z. And this is where the problem then reaches its full proportion, because that process of identifying, well, do we have these versions installed and where? That can easily take a couple of weeks, if not months. So the point is, if you are doing your vulnerability research like this, where you start out with an advisory from one of the aggregators and then make up your mind if you are affected, you're doing it wrong, because that whole identification process just takes way too long. What you should do instead is to do it the opposite way. You start out with your installed base with all the specific software versions that you have, firmware versions, and then you check if there are new vulnerabilities for those products. And certainly that cannot be done manually. That needs some automation. And I show you once more how this is done in the OTbase OT Asset Management System. So what you see here is the events page in OTbase, where you can select a couple of different areas. And here we are looking at the new CVEs, new vulnerabilities. All those CVEs are downloaded automatically by OTbase every 24 hours, so you can be sure that you will never miss a new vulnerability. And then they are presented in this table, where you can always get additional detail by just doing a double click, like so. And then you would get the vulnerability profile and see where the affected devices are, okay? And I would point out two things here. First, if you look at the columns, there is no probability or likelihood. That if you see probability or likelihood associated with CVEs, that's just BS. Trust me, there is no such thing as a probability with CVEs. You are either affected or you aren't, depending on the criteria. Usually it's about a specific software or firmware version, and then there might be other factors such as running on this and that operating system version. And all of that is automatically computed by OTbase. So what you see is real vulnerabilities. You don't have to speculate, well, is this even real, or is this a false positive? Okay. The other thing that I would like to point out here, you can filter this table by just selecting, let's just say, only show me vulnerabilities with critical and high severity, because this is what I understand I need to focus on first. This is my priority. I can't do everything. So we just start with the nasty stuff. So here we have now filtered this events table to only show CVEs with critical and high. like so. And then what, by the way, if you are already using OTbase, you say, oh, wait a second, I haven't seen that before. That's right, because this filter bar here, that's a new capability in OTbase 8.4. So then when you have done your filtering, the list obviously shrinks, and then you would only see in my selection right here, you would only see high severity vulnerabilities. And I can promise you one thing, just browsing such a list has some educational value, because you will get an understanding of the various clusters of vulnerabilities and of the products that are affected most. So let's just quickly look at this example right here. All recent CVEs, you also see that in this chart up here, in this bar chart or timeline, if you will, you would see, well, you know, in December 5th, there were 21 new vulnerabilities. Anyhow, so if we go down that list, you would see VirtualBox, Adobe Reader, not a surprise for my long-term listeners. I told you so many times, Adobe products, they will always be high in the list. And the other thing that you see here, which is very typical, there is not just one vulnerability discovered on December 2nd for Adobe Reader. It's a bunch, more than 10, which in a way is good news, because it would suggest to you that, well, if you update Acrobat Reader, all of those vulnerabilities will be gone, okay? Because they all affect the same version range of Acrobat Reader. Certainly, best case, you would try to remove Adobe Acrobat Reader from those systems where it is not needed, because then you also make sure that there will not, in the future, you won't be affected by any new vulnerabilities that are discovered for Adobe Reader. And trust me, there will be new vulnerabilities for Adobe Acrobat Reader. If you want to learn where those installations are, again, you just do a double click, a drill down, and you would see here the distribution where those affected devices are. So in this example, I would see in my Flatrock plant, well, you know, there is this one Windows box here, virtual machine running Windows 10, where you should update or remove Adobe Acrobat Reader. And then you have Ultra VNC, also interesting. So this just gives you an idea of browsing these tables, these lists. Always is educational, because it allows you to identify where the troublemakers are, and you will find quickly that the troublemakers are usually not in the PLC space or RTU space. So that is quite rare that you would see new vulnerabilities for those firmware versions that you're running on your control logics, for example, or you would see a CVE for firmware running on your PowerFlexes. That is extremely rare. It does not mean that those vulnerabilities don't exist, but they're pretty rare. So most of what you're going to see is vulnerabilities for Windows software, Windows versions and associated applications. And here, just as another example, when we're looking at the critical stuff, this latest one here, guess what? It does affect Firefox. I told you so many times, check your browser, update your browsers, guys. Update your web browsers, because you will see new vulnerabilities all the time for all the browsers. So this is about Firefox. I would see right away where the affected installations are. And also interesting in this example, a very recent vulnerability, it's already exploited in the wild. Okay, so KEV is, yes, this is a known exploited vulnerability. So this is the first impression that you get when you use this events page. And from there, I suggest that you just go down the rabbit hole. Because what many people new to OT vulnerability management fail to understand is that the latest CVEs, they're just the tip of the iceberg. And if you would spend your precious capacity that you have for vulnerability mitigation on those latest vulnerabilities, as nasty as they might appear, you would probably not be able to make much of a difference. So the big problem in OT security is the huge backlog of vulnerabilities. And if you want to get an idea of what that looks like, in OTbase, you would just check in the vulnerability workspace, you would check this table here. So this is the vulnerability master table that has already been pre-selected to critical and high priority. And we are looking at 10,000 CVEs. And so again, this is going back to probably 1999. And always consider this is important in OT, because in OT, you are dragging along those very, very old vulnerabilities. Certainly here you can also see the latest. So I could also, if I just filter by CVE ID, that would then resort the table. So here it takes a little bit longer because it's about 10,000 entries. And that would give me an idea of the order in time. And here is the earliest is from 1999. And I have, let's just see how many affected devices. Oh, I'm lucky, just 3 devices that I still need to fix. So just to give you an idea about the range, which is absolutely typical in OT. So we were going from 1999 to 2024. And we are looking at, in this example, which is very typical for, let's just say, a manufacturing enterprise in OT, we are looking at about 10,000 CVEs. So now we have it resorted. This is the latest and greatest. Inappropriate implementation and navigation in Google Chrome. Guess what? Google Chrome. Oh, we heard that before. And so what you're going to see is, when you think back how you did approach vulnerability management with those CISA advisories, etc., well, you have just barely scratched the surface. And the benefit of OTbase is that it tells you the full story. And only if you understand this full story, which I promise will take a couple of months, because the sheer amount of data is overwhelming, okay? But only if you have gotten a foundational understanding of your attack surface, then you will be able to furnish a mitigation strategy. And that strategy could incorporate various different directions. So, for example, you could focus on prioritizing critical vulnerabilities first. If you have listened to this webcast earlier, you know that's not always the best idea. There are other parameters that go in here, and just another parameter that is usually overlooked is the cost of mitigation. So, I mean, it's always easily said, well, no, those critical vulnerabilities, we need to fix those right away. Okay, now let's assume that those vulnerabilities do affect a power flex, or not just one. So they affect one model of power flex drives, and or even a control logics PLC. And you know right away, well, to fix this, you need downtime. You also need to test that new firmware version first. Okay, so there is no way that this is going to be fixed today or tomorrow. And this is the crux with all those approaches that come with this this categorization: now, next, never. Guess what? Now, when it comes to automation devices, never works, because you're going to need downtime. And nobody will be happy to tell you, oh, I understand that this critical vulnerability, you need to fix that right away. Okay, let's just push the e-stop. Shut it down, shut the whole damn thing down, because Joe now needs and wants to install his new firmware version on our PLCs and drives. That's not going to happen, never. And that is what you need to figure out. You need to furnish a mitigation strategy, and that involves a lot of different factors. And I mean, the worst thing that you can end up with is to follow a school of thought that basically dumbs down this whole vulnerability management process. Vulnerability management in OT is some heavy lifting, and without that strategy, you will not go anywhere. You are just wasting your time, and you're wasting your company's resources. And in order to furnish such a strategy, you need all that data, right? And just again, you have to live in this table here. And there are a couple of other tables that are probably, if we have the time, I'll also get to. You have to live and breathe this table. Just to give you another example, look what's up here, very high: Google Chrome, Google Chrome, Google Chrome. What does that tell you? So even though those are anecdotal observations, trust me, my friends, when you see something like this over and over again, it's going to suggest to you rather sooner than later, well, probably we should really do a better job of updating those browsers, those web browsers. And your IT guys will love you for that, because what's the big thing, the big threat presently? It's ransomware. Okay, ransomware will not affect your drives and your PLCs. It's going to affect your Windows boxes. That is the target of ransomware. It's not about your automation devices. And so this is going to give you a ton of data. You can also see here that you can filter for the attack complexity, attack vector. Can it be remotely exploited via the network, etc., etc. And then, and this is the whole point of this webcast, then you will understand that you must go down that rabbit hole from starting here from the events, right, that I showed you in the beginning. So this is the starting point. This is the first learning experiment that you did. When you all of a sudden you realize, well, we did it wrong the whole time. When we started with just digesting those CISA advisories, we totally did it wrong, because we missed the bigger picture. So that is the first step in the learning curve. And then with those CVE events, you see, oh shit, all of that is new. And the good news will be, but at least I no longer, I don't any longer need to pester my colleagues. Well, do we actually have these versions installed? No, that's taken care of by OTbase. So that's a done deal. But then the next step in the learning curve, when it comes to crafting a vulnerability management strategy that actually makes a difference, the next step in that learning curve is to understand, okay, so far so good, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is what dropped in. the last week or the last month or the last 24 hours. You can also set it to 24 hours in OTbase. So that would be a huge improvement in your understanding of OT security, to realize, okay, that's the latest, but does it really matter? That certainly depends on your database, on your installed base. But I can tell you something, in most organizations, it doesn't matter for the big picture. What certainly does matter for you is that when your boss, when management asks you about those new critical vulnerabilities that they have heard about on X, or they have seen the CISA report, are we affected by those? You can tell them right away, no. Or you could tell them, yes, and we have already initiated some mitigation. We have just deinstalled that Firefox, as an example. You would shine. You would probably be worthwhile of a promotion. And this is how that works. This is where I see the special function of that events table, where you can show anybody you are on top of things when it comes to their understanding of vulnerability management. Certainly, I know about that already. I've already talked to my peers in that plant, I don't know, in Austin, Texas, where they have those outdated Firefoxes installed. I told them, no, you gotta remove that shit. But again, the important thing is to really go down that rabbit hole. Vulnerability management in OT is complex. It's very difficult. It requires some heavy lifting, and you don't want to make it more complicated than necessary. So you got to have that factual database without those silly likelihoods and probabilities. And you also need to be able to view your vulnerabilities, your attack surface, from different angles, including with the installed software, etc. And we'll probably get back to that in one of the upcoming webcasts. And then over the course of a couple of months, a picture starts to form. That picture is about your attack surface, and this is the important piece, also about your mitigation options, because it doesn't help anybody if you run around like crazy. Oh, we are doomed. You gotta fix that, and then somebody taps you on the shoulder to only from, well, we can't. At least not until next April, because before that we won't have any downtime scheduled. That's going to be the reality in many cases. So that is what I want you to consider. Don't be distracted by the latest vulnerability. They're just the entry point in your journey towards a sustainable and into a sustainable process of continuous improvement when it comes to OT vulnerability management. So that is what I wanted to share today. See you next week, same place. Bye.